BC is burning, and somehow it's our fault. David Ebby's worst week and Trump's weirdest grievance just yet. Over 20,000 people forced from their homes. The largest evacuation in British Columbia history. Homes lost. A firefighting official described the Bald Range fire near Summerland as being like a bomb going off. And Premier David Eby had to declare a provincial state of emergency. One of the only times in BC history that's happened specifically because of wildfires. This is a real crisis with real families who are in real danger. So let's start there before we get to the point that's going to make you want to throw something. What actually happened? The Bald Range wildfire discovered near Summerland nearly doubled in size overnight, forcing evacuations across Summerland and Peachland. About 20,000 people combined in the heart of BC's wine country. Air evacuations were underway for people trapped behind the fire perimeter. As of the emergency declaration, the province was tracking over 100 active wildfires. Eby toured evacuation centers, met with evacuees, and most notably, said he'd actually been reluctant to declare the emergency because he was worried about desensitizing the public to future warnings, given how often BC now has to make this call. That's worth sitting with for a second. A premier hesitating to sound the alarm because the alarm has gone off so many times before that people might stop listening. That's not a leadership failure. That's a decade of accelerating climate disasters doing to the entire concept of emergency messaging. Cyclones, alarm fatigue. Alarm fatigue is a documented phenomenon in high-stakes fields such as hospitals, emergency management, aviation, where repeated high-urgency warnings cause people to become desensitized and respond much more slowly over time. Eby naming that risk out loud before declaring the emergency anyway does not mean it's indecision. It's a leader doing a real-time risk calculus about the warning system itself, and not just the fire. And then Trump made it about himself. Here's where this segment turns from tragedy to farce. As smoke from close to 1,000 Canadian wildfires drifted into the American Midwest and East Coast, hazing skies in Chicago, Washington, New York, and Detroit, Donald Trump didn't offer any condolences whatsoever. Instead, he threatened with tariffs. His actual words on Truth Social were, quote, "We are holding Canada responsible for the fact they are not properly maintaining their forests and brush therein, and the United States is being unnecessarily invaded by filthy, polluted, and unhealthy air, the quality of which is dangerous and totally unacceptable." He also later told reporters he'd raised this issue directly with Carney at the World Cup final. Quote, "I told him, you gotta stop these fires from coming in and poisoning our air. If we can help them, we'll help them. But maybe they should pay us some damages or something, or we should do some tariffs." Let's be extremely clear about what's happening here. A country is on fire. People have lost their homes, and the response from our southern neighbor is a bill. Somewhere in Ontario, a family is watching their house burn down. And somewhere in Washington, a man is deciding whether to invoice them for the smoke. The part that's actually quite true. Scientists on both sides of the border pushed back immediately. Wildfire researchers pointed out that Canada's boreal forests, dominated by spruce, fir, and spongy moss-covered soil that's normally waterlogged, aren't the kind of forest that responds to the clean-out brush approach Trump keeps invoking. In hot, dry conditions, the forest floor itself becomes flammable regardless of how it's maintained. One climate scientist called it plainly, quote, "It's weak leadership to blame someone when disasters are happening." There is also an inconvenient math problem for Trump's framing. the US has emitted more cumulative fossil carbon dioxide than any country on Earth. Even Doug Ford, not exactly known for picking fights with Trump, by the way, pushed back, noting Canadian crews helped fight wildfires in California just last year and never got reciprocal help in return. Carney, for his part, brushed off the criticism in French at a presser, noting that fighting climate change is, quote, the responsibility of all countries, including the United States. Cyclens, scapegoating under external threat. When people face a threat too large and diffuse the control like climate-driven disaster, there's a well-documented psychological pull toward assigning it a simple yet controllable villain instead. A wildfire caused by heat, drought, and decades of accumulated emissions is genuinely hard to blame anyone for cleanly. A neighboring country is easy. Trump isn't engaging with the actual mechanism of the fires. He's outsourcing an uncomfortable, uncontrollable problem onto a scapegoat he can tariff. Here's what I want you to sit with. British Columbia had its worst wildfire week in provincial history. Real people lost their homes, and the loudest voice from the South is not even offering any resources to help. Ford even noted Canada has already sent help to the United States before many, many times, unreciprocated. It was pricing out a punishment. David Eby is managing an actual emergency, with actual constraints and actual hesitation about how to communicate it honestly. Donald Trump, however, is managing a grievance. Only one of those is leadership. From a crisis nobody in Ottawa asked for, to a number Mark Carney absolutely did nothing to expect, this early in his tenure, 66%. Let's talk about the most popular man in Canadian politics, being, of all things, a former banker, after this short break.